Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Back again. It's the Code 47 podcast on the Secret.Friends.Unite podcasting network. I am your humble servant, Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, joined by two of my regular steady eddies, regular dudes here in the world. That would be Mr. Peter Stein in the Voyager Reds, sitting on that Type 9 shuttlecraft, Type 9? Or is that, no, that's Delta Flyer.
Delta Flyer.
Whoops, my bad if you're watching us on YouTube. Yes, Peter always goes to the effort. I'm bad. I'm just pimping Secret Friends Unite because I have a family party after this. Don't want to do the quick change. And I always get too hot down here, even though it's cold, because I recorded in my basement studio. There, it's the hot flash of rooms. I just can't get comfortable. But anyway, and of course, last but not least, Aaron Heminger in seat number 3. Good morning to you, my friend.
Good morning.
All right. Well, we're going to dig in. We're continuing a theme that we started last week last episode after we did our TOS castings, fan castings to round out the rest of that crew based on what we're seeing on Strange New Worlds in season 2. We moved into doing some dream remakes that would take place in season 1 of TOS. Now we're doing the same for season 2. So that's going to be our first segment. But before we get to that, we're going to give some love to our patrons, and then we do actually have a news story to discuss. So as always, we are very indebted to these wonderful folks that make it possible for us, myself, Peter, a lot of other people, Todd and Mark, and all the other regulars on the network to make additional content. That would be our Patreons, which you can access by visiting patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Go there, try us out for free for a week, listen to our programs and see what you think. We'd love to have you stay on board. At the Friends with Benefits level, we have returning after a little absence, Corey in HD, John Sedorf, the Awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, Mr. Brendan Myers, cosplayer Asian Sith Mistress, and music enthusiast Matthew Keel. BFF level, as always, our top tier folks, the awesome Nias family from the Twin Cities, Sean, Stella, and Henry, and friend of the show and friend of mine and friend of all of us, Missy Merchant. So thank you folks. Again, patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Try us out for a week. All right. Well, as I said, we have a news story. And, things are starting to evolve. News is actually starting to flow again related to productions. But Sir Patrick Stewart was on a podcast called Happy, Sad, Confused. Weird name for a podcast. Don't know if I would really trust news that came from a source like that. He is very excited about the potential of Picard being featured in a Star Trek movie script coming up. As we all know, the third and final season of Star Trek Picard aired last year to overall acclaim. I certainly felt it was a much more suitable ending to their story than what we saw back in 2002 in Star Trek Nemesis. And I would be hard pressed to find someone to disagree that Star Trek Nemesis was not a great send off for that cast of characters. So again, this is, he's quoted as saying, yada, yada, yada. It's an ongoing for me. I heard a script was being written and so on and so forth. So it seems a little vague to me. But guys, what do you think? Peter, your thoughts on having Picard trotted out there again?
I would say let sleeping dogs lie.
Yeah, ditto, for sure.
As much as I enjoy the character of Jean-Luc Picard, they've kind of run him through the ringer in the last 3 seasons, and part of me doesn't really want to see that happen again. Just because that seems to be how people write things now. Yeah. If they were going to do like a nice, fun story, okay, fine. But if we're just going to be like more of the same of like, hey, let's add trauma to the character, and now it's just sadness and all that, I don't really care.
That must be why it was on the Sad, Happy, Confused podcast. Yeah. They're covering their sadness space. Aaron, what do you think?
I think we're all on the same page here. I mean, my initial reaction to hearing this was, please don't.
Yeah, I know.
The only thing I can really say I would love to see them expand on from that is I still want to know what the deal was with that huge hole that got blown in the Alpha Quadrant in season 2. Because I feel like that's kind of open-ended, and if they're exploring that and explaining that, I'd be happy with that. But beyond that, it ended beautifully in season 3 for those characters, and I'd hate to see that kind of cheapened or taken away.
I mean, it was such a nice tee up with what they ended the season on. 7 headed off on new adventures, rechristened Enterprise through it was kind of a weird route of we're going to take the shipyard, and now it's the Enterprise, and 7 is all of a sudden the captain of it, and now Picard Jr. is going to be on it and stuff. So they kind of teed it up in a way that but then again, 7 new adventures, Ed Speleer's character of Jack Crusher having a face down with Q. Time to kind of transition, our Magnificent 7 of the TOS characters, off into actual retirement. They did it with the they did it with the TOS characters, though some did peek back. We got, their send off in Generations. Scotty had an episode in season 6 of TNG. Spock had his awesome 2-parter. And we saw Sulu and Voyager, and it's just sometimes you just got to let it go. It echoes to me maybe a portion of why the Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny failed this past summer, is that it was too much. And with Star Trek, it's potentially not that there's not demand and interest, but story wise for us in our in what we do in our commentary function, that we're more interested in stories than just it's a thing I know and a character I know, as opposed to foraging forward and finding new stuff. So, well, I'm glad that one of us wasn't giddy goo-ha happy about that, though I'm certainly interested, obviously, in other people's opinions, but that's all right. So anyway, all right. Well, that's our stab at the news. And the good news, we know that Strange New Worlds Season 3 is back in production in Toronto, so that's exciting. We know that we have Discovery coming out sometime in April. That's only a few months away. So in the time in between, we're going to fill you up when it comes to segment 1 with finishing talking about TOS, and then we're going to get into something pretty bold episode after next. That I take it back. I wouldn't say it's bold, but it's a good segment, and I like the way we put it together. So anyway, we're going to jump into segment 2. As I mentioned, talking about the original series, moving into season 2 with our newly assembled cast of folks. And assuming it was a 10-episode season, they were going to revisit some classic moments, maybe redo an episode, maybe incorporate bits of an episode into another one. What would be our dream episode to be remade? So we're going to go, at least as far as I see, kind of clockwise. So we'll start all the way to my extreme left with Aaron. What is your first pick to remake in season 2 of TOS?
Okay, so from my first pick for season 2 remake, and it's kind of a cute little story. It starts with an argument that I had with my wife.
Always a great story.
Yeah,
great
right.
To start a story.
Yeah, we were watching Strange New Worlds, and we were both really enjoying what they've been doing with the Nurse Chapel character and her evolution and the way they've been fleshing her out. And my wife is a huge fan of Nurse Chapel, and we were talking about her in the classic episodes when she was played by Majel Roddenberry and everything. And she was like, "Yeah, my favorite episode of Nurse Chapel was Who Mourns for Adonis."
Ooh.
And I was like, I remember that episode. I don't remember Nurse Chapel being in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's like, no, that was such a great episode because she just played with Apollo, just totally used her feminine wilds and strung him along. And at the end of the episode, she just had that baller move where she was like, "You're nothing but a science experiment to me," and just absolutely crushed a god. That was like Nurse Chapel. And I was like, no, that was someone else. But that's great. So that's my choices. I would love to see Who Mourns for Adonis, but I would love to see that character swap of this new incarnation of Nurse Chapel in that position and see what she would do with the role. Plus, you have the added benefit of Apollo being this multi-dimensional being, and I love the idea of not just
the big hand.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Classic. Absolute classic. And a great Christmas tree ornament at that. But I'd love to see that. I don't want to just see remakes, but I want to see them changed up just a little bit. And him being multidimensional and omnipresent, that's something that you could play with how that would impact the timeline and everything a little bit. And I think that could be a lot of fun. So I'm going to say Who Mourns for Adonis, just because I think it could be a fun episode to touch upon.
Good deal. All right, Peter, what's your number one?
Continuing with my self-imposed restrictions of no major episodes like Trouble with Tribbles or things like that.
Yeah.
I would say The Ultimate Computer. One, we have better special effects, so we can actually have multiple different versions of the same ship flying around.
Right.
But also, I think that the premise is very, very interesting with Dr. Daystrom, but how his mental breakdown proceeds throughout the episode could be handled a little bit better.
Yeah.
And I think that the way that we understand how that works now, that could be played a little bit more, one, subtly, two, in a more dramatically interesting way. So I think that episode could be a really interesting way to do that. But also then you have, the classic Kirk versus computer, but having more things going on than just like, it's a computer that's running a planet. There's more stakes. Right. There's more things going on with it.
Yeah.
And so, and then we get to see Dr. Daystrom once again. Obviously they would have to recast him.
Right.
But it would just be interesting to see a different take on the character that doesn't necessarily have to have like that, just like, handshaking crazy fairly early on in the episode.
I'm losing my mind.
So,
who would you pick just off the top of your head to
the
be?
The problem is I don't know a lot of younger actors.
Yeah.
Because I watch a lot of older movies.
I mean, the character wasn't necessarily younger.
He was like 50.
Okay, I mean, you could go with like Idris Elba.
If it was someone like me, I would go. Idris Elba would be a solid choice.
Yeah,
I would go with Denzel Washington, but that's just
right. But yes, it's funny you
say
a little
older though. So.
Yeah, you think the thought of someone that big league being on TV, blah blah blah. But TV has changed so much in the streaming era, and certainly post COVID when there weren't films in the theaters, that the lines have become so blurred, so you just never know. Nice, I like that. And that was, I'm sure you're familiar with in 2006 for the 40th anniversary, how they took that episode specifically and they recomposited all the external space shots.
No, the space shots look a lot better in the recomposite. I'm just saying, like, we could make it a little bit more dynamic.
Well, you could have 4 different ships. I mean, 4 different designs could be in the mix.
Or just like have the combat and the war games be a little bit more intricate in how they're
exciting.
Like, are they hiding behind planets? Are they doing all these other things? Because they're just kind of flying in deep space in the original episode. So it'd just be
as much as they could do with the wires. Doot, 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 doot.
Yeah,
the little things that
all the little AMC models that they had to keep far away so no one could tell that there weren't any registries on them.
Some little guy clanking between them. So good stuff. All right. Well, I picked a Kirk-centric episode that I always liked, and that it's Obsession. So we're talking about the contender. Yeah, the dichronium creature that kind of gives us a deeper dive into what makes Kirk the way he is. Grief, guilt, everything that came with that incident that happened, if you're not familiar with the episode, early in his career when he was on the USS Farragut. He felt responsible for the fact that a spaceborne cloud assaulted, the ship from space and killed a bunch of people, including his first commanding officer, who was, his role model, his idol. And then flash forward to now, they stumble upon the same creature. That same role model's son is an ensign under his command, and so it just gets, it gets really complicated, kind of emotionally. I would also really like to see that creature using some, getting some serious 21st century updating instead of just sparkly lights. Like, ooh, the sparkly lights are getting me. Early contender for name of the episode, sparkly lights are getting me. There, I almost never get one, so I might have to stick with that. But yeah, I think that would be great. And again, Paul Wesley, I admire what he does. I think he's a great actor, and I think that he could continue to deepen that aspect of kind of developing the character. So and I do have a couple of picks from Jen, which I will read at the end. But we'll go back to Aaron, and we will get your number 2 pick.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah, I'd like to say I definitely love the fact that we're all kind of on the same page here because I have those picks as well for episodes I would love to see that you guys picked the fantastic choices. But I did have another one that I came up that I would love to see. I would love to see a remake of the Doomsday Machine.
That was on my list.
Yeah,
classic, nice.
Yeah, absolutely classic episode, and like I'd love to see that updated as well, and see that portrayed as more of a galactic threat and everything. And I would also kind of love to see some more of Commodore Decker, and maybe a little bit more of how he ties into like the character of Decker in the motion picture.
Yeah. Right. Which we had a chapter New Year's Eve party that the three of us were in attendance at our security chief Corey at his house, where we watched the director's cut in HD of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, which we had a lot of fun riffing on all the way through. Myself in particular, such a misunderstood film, but I digress.
Yeah, great time. But yeah, no, that's absolutely put it fresh in my mind, so that's why it was back there. But yeah, I would love to see that updated.
Yeah,
cool.
I think that I just feel like I have to comment a little bit because Doomsday was on there for one of mine up there, and just seeing how they could redo some of the special effects for the machine itself would be kind of cool. Yeah. Like the remastered version looks a lot better than the tinfoil wrapped,
cornucopia
in the original, but. Having fought those things in both like the old Starfleet Command movies, Starfleet Command video games, and like Star Trek Online, I just would really like to see that thing like ramp up the terror of that thing, because like it's described as being absolutely terrifying, but some of the camera shots don't always make it seem as scary as it is.
You're like, ooh, it's got bends and peaks and valleys and a big mouth. It
would just be interesting to see how not necessarily a full redesign, but like a retexture and some bits and bobs done a little differently.
Evil space cornucopia.
Yes. Maybe put some googly eyes on it. I mean,
that would make it very terrifying.
I think it turns into wobble wobble. Yes. Oh, I want it. All right. Well, let me jump in with my number 2 pick. That would be The Pilot That Never Was, season finale of Assignment Earth.
Oh gosh.
With Robert Lansing. Oh, I'm getting some eye rolls here. It's a fun episode. In some ways, it's kind of satirical. I would have to dig in, but I'm sure Robert Lansing was somebody of note in like the Western era, where he was like, he was, actually in Westerns with John Wayne. He's just got that presence. Plus, I love his last name of Lansing, because that's our state capital here in Michigan. But we got Terry Garr, I think maybe even before Laugh-In, which you guys may or may not know anything about. It was a very 60s variety show that was, I don't know. Yeah, just Google it. But anyway, it was originally designed as a backdoor pilot to then further the adventures of Robert Lansing's character of Gary Seven, and then Terry Garr is his executive secretary Gal Friday, helping him out as they bounce through space and time and put things right that once were wrong, like quantum quantum leap or whatever.
Familiar.
I wonder if it's a concept that's ever been done before or since. The episode itself was a great comment on. Though the premise of it was stupid, in my opinion, because even right from the opening log, Kirk's like, we've used space warp trajectory to slingshot into the past to study events from 1968. I'm like, that's not something that you're allowed to do. It's been thoroughly established that there's the Office of Temporal Investigations. And it's funny because in that DS9 episode where we meet Domer and Luxley, aka Mulder and Scully, who are interrogating Sisko after
a menace.
Yeah, the man was a menace, but I'm like, he was there on orders. That was an assignment that he did, but they're still throwing him under the bus. But I like that. I really love it. And again, I think Jen touches on this in her comments, which we'll read in a minute. But so many, themes in season 2 and great characters got introduced, had these great sharp parallels to things that were going in the 60s. So Private Little War was your big Vietnam commentary. Even the Ultimate Computer was about, automation and people losing their jobs to computers and blah, blah, blah. But I in particular in this episode loved Terry Garr's commentary about, a lot of people think my generation acts pretty crazy, but it's probably because most of us don't think that we're going to be alive by the time that we're 30 because of the kind of stuff that you saw happening in this episode where, it's Gary's mission, which of course he can't talk about because the temporal prime directive or whatever, to stop this missile that gets launched, that goes off course, and it's got to explode exactly 100 kilometers over the Earth and stuff. So I love it, and I would love to see if this. I would, much like with Strange New Worlds itself, that concept, Assignment Earth, gets spun off. That is successful in becoming a successful backdoor pilot. So I don't know. Pipe dreams all around. But I think that would be pretty cool. Okay.
I do have one more episode. If you want to do that before we get into Jen's.
Did I cut you off? I feel so bad. You have one more episode, like you're doing a third one, or is my brain?
No, it's the second one.
So. Oh my God, I am so sorry. Yes, please. I broke the concept. Broken. Go ahead.
So the other episode that I have is the Gamesters of Triskelion.
10 Quatlus for the newcomer. 15.
So, 1, it leans into the stupid, which we sometimes need. 2, this is one that has some interesting concepts, both in just the gambling and the gaming and all of that sort of deal, and what lives are worth in that instance. But also, I think it's one of the ones that, if handled correctly, could help with the continuation of the rehabilitation of Kirk's character in the modern eye.
Yeah. Because it needs all the help it can get.
Well, because we all think of Captain Kirk as Zap Brannigan, and he's not. And so if you actually watch this episode and redo this episode with that eye, then you can see how Kirk uses his charms as a tool. He's not a womanizer in the same way that a lot of people like to characterize him. Thank you, JJ.
With Angela.
So I know this is a little bit selfish of just wanting to rehabilitate Kirk's character, but I think that this is an episode that would, 1, be fun and dumb, but 2, also have a second motivation.
Do we get Lady Gaga as Angela Petty?
If we could actually get Lady Gaga to come on to play her, that would be fantastically hilarious. But I doubt. Well, you never know. She's up for weird things. So
with the tinfoil outfit, that's a meme that, you have that classic Kirk standing behind her, kind of arms around her shoulder, saying, I'm suddenly thinking of baked potatoes.
One of my favorites is, we shall have a child and she shall go there and her name will be Lady Gaga. Like, it's just like, I enjoy those memes. Like,
nailed it.
She'd be up for the stupid. You never know.
Right. Oh my God. I would certainly hope so. Okay. All right. Well, our third chair, Jen Watson, is out sick today. So she was not able to join us. She said her voice was thoroughbare, but she did send me her picks because she wanted me to go through and kind of briefly read them. And I'm glad that she sent them. So her number one pick is a piece of the action, because it fits with the zaniness of Strange New Worlds, and I think it would be fun to see how a modern story explains the gangster planet. Totally. I like it. Pick 2 is A Private Little War, which I just mentioned, because an updated Mugato and updated Klingons, I'd like to see how the political message carries out today. And Mbenga is featured. He comes back, and I'd like to see how they would address his absence and return. Good point. Yeah, we never necessarily know that he left, but this is when we see him. This is one of Peter. Correct me if I'm wrong. He appears. Does he appear twice, or is it?
I think he only appears twice.
Gotcha.
So.
Yeah, because he shows up as a Vulcan specialist who helps heal Spock after Spock gets shot in the back, or he's get shot. He gets shot in the back, and Kirk gets the Mugato bite, and then the Umbatu woman heals him with what basically looks like horse manure. She puts on, like, he's healed. If I'm remembering correctly.
It's an interesting episode.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And her final thought is a lot of season 2 has already been introduced. Sarek, T'Pring, Mudd, the Mirror Universe. And it would be neat to see those retold with a new cast and different contexts. And then, in my opinion, you do not touch the Trouble with Tribbles unless you pull a Trials and Tribulations with it, which they could find a way to sub in the footage from that episode, and then it would be a reason to remake that episode in HD. I think that'd be pretty sweet. So good deal.
I would stay away from the Mirror Universe in its entirety.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I love the TOS Mirror episode.
Right.
I don't want to see what's been done with the Mirror Universe brought into that episode.
Yeah,
Full stop. Don't want to see that.
Yeah, it's kind of like Picard. We've done enough, for good or for bad, and let's just move on. So I totally agree. Well, cool. Good deal. All right. Well, guys, make sure you get your list ready for next episode with season 3. And then we will be moving from season 3 into the next great adventure, which we will talk about in our next episode. But in the meantime, we're going to move into segment 2 and talk about Star Trek Voyager. We're moving into the second segment of talking about season 4, which aired in the 97 to 98 season. I was a regular watcher and taper at this point, much like I was with TNG, closer to the end of that series. And I was in college at the time, so that was always a joke between myself and Todd Axter, who is my co-host over on our main show and originator of this network that we're on, that I was so fastidious about getting those and taping out the commercials, and my mom would do it for me sometimes. Actually, I think she always did it for me, but I always had my pile of VHS tapes, so I go back and rewatch them, and it's just so funny that I don't know about you guys, but there hasn't been a VCR in any house I've owned in 20 years, at least 15. You're pointing to a VCR. Oh my gosh, you can still find. I'm sure you could scour a.
I still have tapes. I could play them if I wanted to. I don't ever, but I could.
All right, scour a flea market somewhere and find. What about you, Aaron? You're an AV guy. Do you have a VCR and tapes around?
You know, it's funny. I've been on the hunt for one because I get a lot of people who want me to transfer some of their old VHSs to digital.
Yeah.
So but I haven't been able to find one that'll do the recording and have the hookups that I need yet. But
gotcha. Well, I'll tell you what, I will, and I don't go into a lot of flea markets, but I do from time to time. If I see one, I will let you know.
Thank you.
You got it. All right. Well, let's jump on in. And it's funny, we have 7 segments, but one is essentially a single because it's a 2-parter. So I'll kick it off and I'll read both parts of our first selection here. And this was a sweeps month episode. So it was big stakes and a lot of different stuff. And it ends up being one of my favorites, but it also ends up being one that's really tough to watch because of what happens to our beloved Voyager. But we're talking about The Year of Hell, parts 1 and 2. Part 1 being directed by Alan Croker, who is a regular of the series. Mike Vehar directed part 2. This was written by Branna and Joe Minoski. Again, the guys who are very much responsible for the shows. We got a flurry of star dates. I'm going to skip them. This aired on November 5 and November 12, respectively, in 1997. When Voyager creates a new astrometrics lab, it leads them into a new course that brings them into contact with a Krenim temporal ship that can erase things from history. And as that starts to happen, the timeline continues to change, and the ship is damaged, and people are dying, and the ship becomes uninhabitable. And certainly by the end of part 1, the ship is evacuated with the exception of our main cast, which doesn't include Paris and Chakotay, who get kidnapped close to the end of part 1. As Voyager hides in a nebula, and there's just the skeleton crew on board, Paris and Chakotay, Chakotay really connects with the Krenim commander, who's played by the awesome Kurtwood Smith, Red Foreman of that 70s show, if you happen to be a fan, and from RoboCop and a lot of other stuff you've seen, was also the Federation president in Star Trek VI. And Tom Paris works the other angle, figuring out a way to outmaneuver him, which he does. And by the end of it, Janeway, being the last crew member on board the extremely malfunctional Voyager, crashes it into the temporal ship, and we go right back to the very beginning, and everything is fine, and it's Mulligan the sweeps entry. Ooh, that could be a good one too. Sweeps Mulligan. I'm going to do it. All right, I'm going to change that while we talk about that. Aaron, you go first.
I really enjoyed this 2-parter. It kind of represents everything that I both love and everything I kind of hate about Voyager in a lot of ways, because it has a lot of great character development, especially with 7 of 9 in the situation she's placed in, where she's kind of in a new role for her, where she's caregiver for Tuvok, because he gets injured during the whole thing, and she feels responsible for that. And we kind of get to see her humanized a little bit more. And I feel that was some great character development, but of course, by the end of it, everything gets reset. So it never technically happened, and everything gets back to status quo, which is my biggest pet peeve with Voyager and a lot of Trek in general, because it's not just Voyager, but that's such a big pet peeve for me. But the other thing I really enjoyed about this, especially with all the timey-wimey stuff, I really enjoyed seeing Voyager get put through its paces, especially in a combat scenario, because the thing you got to remember about the Intrepid class, they're science vessels. They're not meant for long-term engagement and long-term warfare.
Yeah,
and stuff
a
like
scout.
that.
Yeah, 6 week out, 6 weeks out, 6 weeks back. Probably
Yeah.
mostly operating from a star base and a lot of supplies and stuff.
Mhm.
So yeah,
they're versatile, and that's great. But that's part of what's so wonderful about the Voyager crew is just seeing how innovative they are and how they push this machine to its just absolute limits.
yeah,
So
for sure.
That's my thoughts on this episode. Anyway,
Cool,
I thought it was great.
Yeah.
Awesome, Peter.
I mean, there's not much more I can say. It's a great two-parter with all of those extra details. I thought it was interesting how the Krenim commander was we're all like, well, what's he doing? He's just trying to restore his empire. And they get to a point where we're like 98% restored to whatever they wanted. And then it's like, but his family is still
right. Yeah, he doesn't get his wife back. That's in that 2%. And he's like, nope, got to keep going.
And so he just he focuses on just that one thing. And like, it's understandable. Like when you're watching it, you can empathize with the man, but at the same time, you're just like, dude, you just keep like destroying the space-time continuum for like two people. I mean, most of us would want to do that because, we care about our families or our friends or like, we'd want to do that. Right. But it's like, it's just interesting how we can see how damaging that is.
Right.
If you just like, you throw caution to the wind and you just like, I'm just going to do whatever I'm going to do. And just kind of mess with everything. And it takes all the way till Janeway just destroys the ship to reset the timeline.
She much like in the last episode, she Janeways
her way through it, which is pretty classic.
I know.
But I just thought it was interesting because it's not I think it's something that's done in time travel stories on a semi-regular basis, but you destroy the implementation of the time travel incident and then things get reset because it no longer existed.
Right. Yeah. It's without a doubt, it's a trope.
It's an interesting thing. It's not always done in Star Trek because a lot of times artifacts of whatever happened still remain. Right. And in this case, that doesn't seem to have happened at all.
Right.
Which is an interesting way of doing it because that's just not how usually Trek does it.
Yeah, it's like in TNG in episodes like Descent Parts 1 and 2 where Data goes nuts and he's a big threat, but then at the end of it we're like, oh no, it's good. And I remember watching that with Todd way back when he's like, oh, just forget about all those people I killed. It's not a big deal. It wasn't me. This episode is echoed in kind of modern parlance over in the MCU in What If and the focus of the character of the Supreme. The Supreme or the Extreme Doctor Strange, who we see both in seasons 1 and in season 2. Spoilers if you haven't watched it. The entire focus of everything he's doing is exactly the same as Anorax, as Kurtwood Smith's character in this. But in the multiverse, you can be like, well, I changed time, but now I can move over to another universe and find the right one where, this guy's just got one universe to deal with. So he's just going to keep poking it until it's like, So, and then he's, trying to teach Chakotay how to do what he does. And he's like, well, you did it, but you also eliminated the blah, blah, blah species. And I'm like, dude, pot calling the kettle black here. Yeah. He's been doing it for 200 years because they're ageless because they live in this temporal bubble. So he could keep doing this forever.
We're trying to manipulate the butterfly effect. It's like the whole point of the butterfly effect is you can't predict it.
Yeah.
So
exactly. It's the, and it was echoed in, I think it was X-Men Days of Future Past, my favorite X-Men film, where you see Hank McCoy talking about, throwing a stone into a river. It'll change the current, but eventually the current will again right itself because time is immutable. It just has the one course where it's supposed to run. So I dug it. It was, the hardest part for me was watching Voyager just get cut to shit. But obviously, anybody who's watched this says, well, they're going to figure out a way to get it set because the ship is not going to go on with, they're flying around in the falling apart Battlestar Galactica kind of ship. That was always Ron Moore's contention with that show, which again, Peter and I have been going through that in over on one of our Patreons. I was talking about that great show. My other favorite show in the whole wide world is that show, where he was very fixated on the fact that, hey, you've got a ship that has no support and no support base or repair base. So it's just going to get crappier looking as time goes on, where with Voyager, no matter what, they're always able to, this thing blew out and a thing fell out of the ceiling. That we got a guy and he's just going to replicate some parts and it's going to be no big deal. Where on Battlestar, it started looking more and more like a 78 Pinto as time went by. And it wasn't great looking to start with because it was an old ship where Voyager was brand new. So, but yeah, no, I dug this episode, but again, kind of hard to watch because you're like, oh, my poor Voyager. Anyway, all right, well, let's move on. Peter, I'll start going in reverse order. So, Peter, why don't you talk to us about episode 10?
All right, episode 10, Random Thoughts, of which many of us have many.
Yes.
Directed by Alexander Singer, written by Kenneth Biller, aired November 19th of 97. Torres is arrested while visiting a world of telepaths where violent thoughts are crime. So this is a very interesting episode. How we get brought in the idea from like the 1984 novels of like the thought police, but in this case it's a little bit different because they are in fact telepaths.
Oh, right. Real thought police.
So there's a little bit more going on there. However, you do have the whole interesting thing of like supposedly how they describe it before, the plot twist. It's like, oh, well, we are not exposed to violent thoughts very often, so we're very impressionable. And so if those happen, then we take them on and shit happens.
Yeah, right.
Which when you first hear it, you're like, that's kind of dumb. And,
right.
And then like the episode through the investigator and everything, they try to convince you. And then, I mean, at least me watching it, I was like through the whole time, my first watcher, I was like, that's just dumb.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't make sense. There's something else going on here. And then eventually you do find out that there's this underground group of people who get their jollies by experiencing murderous memories and murderous emotions, or just extreme emotions in general.
Right. And just experiencing, but not necessarily acting.
Not necessarily acting them out.
Which is how they keep underground. So it's like some kind of psychic fight club kind of thing.
Yeah, it kind of is. And so like there is something to if they experience too strong of an emotion, it can overwhelm them to a point. So like there is something there. So it's not complete crap.
Yeah.
But the way that they kept on insisting on it. So, but it's also an interesting thing where we bring in the Starfleet's idea of like, you're on another planet, you're under their laws. So if you break them, it's kind of on you. Like we had that with Wesley and the flowers and TNG.
Right. But they still didn't kill him. Damn it.
So like, there's a lot of that going on. And so it's interesting to see how they try to like get her out of it using the laws and the system that's there. And eventually, Janeways and has Tuvok go and investigate things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool there. It's interesting, the concept of like thoughts becoming illegal because people think like this is the only way to do stuff. Because there has been swirling people talking about that sort of thing for a while. I'm not commenting on anyone in particular. I've just heard this in the ether.
Yeah.
And so it's just interesting that this is going around, and so it becomes an episode, and it's like, yeah, trying to police thoughts is kind of a dumb idea because, passion and thought just kind of happens.
Right.
You don't really have control over it necessarily. You have control over what you do with it. And we see that with Torres of like, yeah, she wanted to punch this guy in the face because he was kind of a jerk.
Yeah, it bumped into her. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they were going to lobotomize her anyway because, reasons.
Yeah. So like, so there's just some interesting commentary there about like, thoughts are thoughts, and it's what you do with it that's the part that matters.
Right. Yeah. You don't want to get into another man's head. There's no doubt about it. All right, Aaron.
This was a really interesting episode. A little hard to watch in some parts for me. The antagonist was just super creepy.
Yeah.
And his whole interaction with Tuvok felt just so invasive.
Yeah.
And the whole concept behind it, I was like, oh man, this is really uncomfortable, especially if everything poor B'Elanna goes through. This is one of those episodes where I find myself kind of disagreeing with Janeway an awful lot with some of the choices that she makes. Like the fact that I understand wanting to respect an alien race and show them integrity and show the best of ourselves as representatives of the Federation and everything like that. But to me, in a leadership role, your people got to come first.
Totally.
And
I agree.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we have to respect their culture and everything. But like on the other hand, it's like, yeah, but this is B'Elanna's culture. This is what she's born with. She can't help the fact that she has these overly aggressive thoughts. That's who she is. That's who her people are.
Right.
And it just seems to me like the situation she's in can easily be remedied by just, beaming her out of the lab and everything when it starts to go too far. And
right.
She had her badge on the whole time. I'm sure they could have gotten a signal lock, but that preservation of the integrity of their culture and everything, I at Prime Directive, being as mutable as it is sometimes, I would think that would be an exception to, okay, time to step in and use the big guns.
I mean, the Prime Directive doesn't exactly apply here because it is another warp capable society.
That's true. You're right.
That is correct. Yeah. So no, interesting. I agree with you. Great episode. It's funny. I hadn't seen this episode in a long time, but I had heard it because there was a period of time in my car where I could play an episode through Paramount Plus and I could just listen to it as I drove. And I did a few in a row here from this early part of season 4. I don't know why, but this is the one that I listened to the audio drama of it. So I had heard it more recently than seeing some of the other ones. And I think that the same is true for the other couple that follow. And I may have also tuned into the episodes of the Delta Flyers that was talking about this. I know that's, of course, Robbie and Garrett's show that covered every episode of Voyager. I know I listened to it right from the beginning and I dropped off for a while and I tuned back in during the last couple of seasons. So I may not have caught this one. But I love it. Doing what Star Trek does best. And exploring really just exactly what Peter was talking about. So definitely top marks for this episode without a doubt. All right, Aaron, episode 11 is yours. Uh-oh, we lost you, buddy. You still there?
You're muted.
Come back.
Sorry, I do that all the time.
That's okay.
Okay, yes, episode 11, Concerning Flight. I am going to try to pronounce this director as best as I can. Jesus Salvador Trevino.
You got it.
Okay. Awesome. I think so too. Okay. So teleplay by Joe Minosky. Story by Jimmy Diggs and Joe Minosky. This original air date for this was November 26, 1997. And the synopsis is: aliens steal several key components of Voyager, which are retrieved with assistance from a holographic Leonardo da Vinci.
Sala.
Yeah, absolutely.
John Rhys Davies.
Old Gimli himself back in action.
You bet.
This is before Lord of the Rings.
Oh yeah. Yep. Classic. Yeah, no, great episode. It was a pretty simplistic concept, seeing the theft of several key components from Voyager, and great opportunity for the cast to go undercover. And they go down to the planet. They're surprised to see that Leonardo da Vinci is there, for lack of a better term, in the flesh.
Yes.
Having one of the items that they stole was the doctor's mobile emitter, and they used that to bring Da Vinci on board. And Da Vinci was working for the bad guy for a good part of this. He wasn't sure of where he was. He thought he was on Earth
in America.
Yeah, America.
Yeah, the New World. Yeah, so that explains all the discrepancies and everything. And it was just kind of a fun episode, and getting to see her Janeway work with her mentor in the field. Just a classic true crime kind of find the missing devices and everything. Just overall fun, solid episode, I thought.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. Obviously love John Rhys Davies. I always had, since he was, in my favorite film of all time, which Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I saw in the theaters when I was 5 years old. So it was awesome to see him. He had been around since as a holographic character, the latest of kind of Janeway's, holographic pals or programs that she runs on a regular basis, which I don't know how much more we saw of him after this episode. I tend to feel like this was either the last or pretty close to the end. But again, he's not Vic Fontaine, which Vic Fontaine on DS9 we enjoyed in season 6 and 7 in bits and pieces. So, but he wasn't I don't know. I cared for that character more than I cared for Leonardo da Vinci, even though da Vinci was real. Really play, and then he and Janeway get to have a lot of great scenes in this. They get to fly his glider to do this big escape, and you get Tuvok going on, said basically saying to Janeway, like, all accounts of this guy is that he's a big flake and you probably shouldn't count on him to help you out. But in the end of it he does, even though she has to convince him that he's not really in America and she needs to help him out, yada yada yada. So it's fun. It's a fun kind of crisis of the week kind of episode. The stakes are are mid range, because obviously they got to get the warp core back, they got to get back all these supplies, this different stuff. But yeah, no, I like it, and I kind of like the way it resolved out. It was pretty neat, good stuff. All right, well, episode 12 is Mortal Coil, directed by Alan Croker. Brian Fuller, who's one of the main writers, took care of this one from December of 97. Neelix dies, which some people would laud who don't enjoy the character, in an attempt to sample protomatter from a nebula. 7 of 9 is able to resuscitate him using Borg nanoprobes, but Neelix, having no memory of an afterlife of any kind, experiences a type of spiritual crisis. I like it. Very much so. And again, different people have very strong feelings about the afterlife and about a deity and about a this and about a that. And so you do get a better exploration of Neelix's character, which I feel like I come to appreciate a lot more when Kess isn't around, and it's a shame Jen is not here to talk about it, because I know she has very strong feelings about Voyager in general. But again, this is a topic that we've discussed. My opinion, Neelix really excels when he's on his own. There's a lot more complexity to the character, and this is great. The episode isn't even ruined by the appearance of the transitory child actor who is playing the Naomi Wildman character at this point, who is just, to me, just god awful. Little kid actors, it's hard to get a great one anyway. I don't know if one really exists at that age. But throughout his exploration of this, both before and after his it's not even a near-death incident, it's a death incident, where he had his bedtime story to Naomi was, the Great Forest and blah blah blah. My sister is there, and and when he comes back, he says, well, I didn't remember experiencing any of that. He was dead for almost a day, and so he's struggling with what all this means, and it's growth for the character. I really enjoyed it. I think it told a story that probably would apply to any of us, which is having this kind of struggle if you died and came back to life and there was nothing but blackness, and if you were someone who your personal religious beliefs really believed in heaven or crossing the river and seeing your family on the other side, a la Laura Roslin from Battlestar Galactica, that would be jarring. And what would you do with those emotions? So I thought it was pretty intense, and I thought it was a great way to see the character grow. Peter.
I actually don't really care for this episode much. In part because while they handle it directly with Neelix, there's kind of a dismissiveness that underlies the whole concept, which I don't really like. Mm-hmm. And in part because there's no, I get it where the writers are coming from. But the fact that the episode ends with no clear resolution for Neelix.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, hey, you got to deal with it. Good luck.
It's not really that great, because they don't really approach any of the the philosophical implications of well, did he act this is going to get into the weeds for a second here because I'm a philosophy major. But the fact that you didn't see anything when you were quote unquote dead, does that actually mean anything, or does it just mean that you didn't technically die at that time because the afterlife is outside of time and all of this stuff? So there's a lot going on here that some of the thought process just isn't really there for me. Mm-hmm. And that's, again, because I'm a philosopher, it annoys me.
Fair.
So there's a lot of interesting parts. There's a lot of spots where for instance, Chakotay tries to help him out, but then you also have Neelix who he's just struggling with this thing, but he doesn't necessarily want to approach it head on the entire time. Which it is kind of classic Neelix.
Yeah. Classic Neelix.
But he does have people who are trying to help him, but I don't know. There's just some things in there that just, am I really me? Okay, that's an interesting concept, but we didn't really pursue it that much. Mm-hmm. Or pursue the metaphysics behind that.
Yeah.
And maybe that's just me expecting too much philosophy out of Star Trek, even though it does do it and does do it decently.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't really care for this episode for that much.
Yeah.
There's some solid acting and some solid stuff, but overall, I don't think it really, at least for me, it's not a good resolution with, or like deep dive look into that particular issue. And
Gotcha.
As I said, a little dismissive, which I don't really appreciate.
I hear you. That's fair. Aaron.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Peter says here. It was kind of kid gloves with the subject matter, but it's a tough subject to talk about, and I do kind of enjoy the juxtaposition of this character that was created primarily for comedic relief, put into this position where he has to deal with these heavy topics and everything.
Right? No, agreed.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, and it's easy to relate to Neelix in this situation because I think that this is something that a lot of us at some point or another have to struggle with and find the answers for ourselves. I've definitely gone through this, and again, I hate the fact that Voyager has created an episode that made me relate to a character that I'm largely not a fan of, but I've definitely been there before, and I came to the same conclusion. I remember talking to my mom a while back, where we were talking about the subject of is there life after death, and I was like, well, what if there is nothing? What if we have nothing to look forward to, and what does anything matter? And she told me something that I found very comforting and I think of very often. It's like, at the very least, if there is nothing after you've died, at least you had the opportunity to have lived.
Very true. Very true. That's solid.
Yeah, and that's kind of my takeaway, and that's kind of how I resolved my crisis that I went through with that. And
gotcha. That's good. Awesome stuff. All right. Well, let's wrap it up with an episode that didn't exactly blow the doors off for me, but I'll let Peter talk about it.
Episode 13, Waking Moments, directed by Alexander Singer, written by Andre Boromanis. Aired January 14th of 98. The crew become trapped in a shared nightmare generated by alien technology. Only Chakotay, through his Native American spiritual capabilities, can save them. Okuchimoya all the way.
Oh, wait. My peopling intensifies.
Yeah. This one's... there's a lot of interesting stuff going on here. I like the concept of the shared dream. Like, it's Inception before Inception.
Yeah.
And it does it in a slightly more interesting way for me because there's a lot of more deception going on with it.
Deception Inception.
That
sounds just there's a Hall & Oates song called Possession Obsession. So there you go. Roll it all together. Possession Obsession, Inception, Deception. Change the name of the episode now. Carry on.
So it's an interesting thing where we get like Chakotay is able to do like the whole like lucid dreaming sort of deal, and so he's able to like help them figure out what's going on. So I like that this episode has a little bit more of Chakotay being able to do something for people and kind of take charge here. It's something that kind of peters out as the series continues.
No pun intended. Peter says it peters out.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like these earlier episodes are where I really like Chakotay, and this is one of them.
Yeah.
As much as the concept of some of how it all works is a little like goofy. It's kind of cool how he's like going through and then like, it's like, oh, well, we're in a dream. I don't think we're in a dream. Well, Chakotay vanished. Oh, we must still be in a dream then. Like there's just
so it's like the holodeck episode where Moriarty comes back, and I'm drawing a blank.
It's like Ship in a Bottle.
Yeah, like Ship in a Bottle, where they're like, oh, but we're really still in the holodeck because Geordi caught the thing with his left hand instead of his right hand or whatever, and so we never left the holodeck because we've been tricked in this kind of stuff. So yeah, that switcheroo does happen several times in the episode. So and you get like a later. I think this trope has been done before, but where they find the aliens. And it's like, well, if you don't stop, we're going to blow you up, but you're going to die. I don't care. You're going to blow up. Yeah, right. Enjoy blowing up, jerk. Aaron, your thoughts?
I loved Voyager's take on Inception. It was really, really great. A lot of that, the dream within the dream scenario, I thought that was a lot of fun. I love that what Chakotay goes through on this episode with the whole, at one point, just he had that his trigger for waking up was seeing the image of the moon.
Right.
And just seeing the moon kind of pop up randomly for him and be like, wait a minute, I'm still dreaming. And
it should have turned into somebody's head at some point. Like he's looking at Janeway and it's just the moon. It looks like Back Tonight.
I thought it was hilarious how to appear on the L-Cars panel.
Yes. Yeah. That was what I was thinking of. Like, oh, wait, hold on a second here.
Yeah, I just that was all fantastic. And I love the opening sequence where we get to see Tuvok's nightmare of where he walks on the bridge and
he has showing up to math class.
And I asked why you needed to dress. I would rather you did not.
That was great. I loved it. Overall, I thought it was a really solid and fun episode.
And they're still playing with Harry Kim being interested in 7 of 9, which really goes away.
It goes nowhere.
Yeah, pretty much after this. So yeah, I again loving the concept, and I like Chakotay as a character. I'm less enthused with Robert Beltran as a person after everything that happened last year. But whatever, it doesn't stop me from enjoying the character, because again, it was pioneering a new direction of a character and kind of their beliefs and what their thrust is. I never knew anything about the fake Native American advisor person. Like that was like Kate told me about that while we were doing an episode a while back. I had never heard about that at all. I have no idea how long that went on for, or maybe that's why we saw less of Chakotay talking about his spiritual beliefs, so on and so forth. But this was great, and it was it was better than having what turned into the Doctor in the 7 of 9 show, which every time they run into a crisis, it's one of the two of them has got to solve it. Just like on Enterprise, it turned into Phlox and T'Pol kind of doing that, because they have a carbon copy episode where we got to put everybody to sleep to get through the space cloud or whatever, So this had elements of that, but again, at least we tossed Chakotay into the driver's seat, and I got to see more of the character that I like so much. So it worked for me without a doubt. So all right, well, let's wrap it up by picking out of this grouping a favorite and a least favorite. So we'll start with Aaron.
Okay, so I would say that for my least favorite, I'm probably going to go with let me look at my random thoughts. I think just because it was a good episode, but I had a lot of conflicts with some of the choices made by the characters and everything in it. And I felt like some of them weren't at their best here, and it just made me uncomfortable.
Yeah, fair.
And for favorite, I gotta go with Waking Moments, I think, because that was
cool.
It was just a lot of fun, and I love episodes that really make me think and be like, okay, I literally do not know what's going on, what's going to happen next.
Yeah, exactly. Your princess is in the other castle. Cool. Mm-hmm. All right, Peter. How about you?
For least favorite, I think we all know where I'm going here. Mortal Coil.
Yeah.
I just really did not like that episode much. And for favorite episode out of this group, I am actually going to go, because I'm not touching Year of Hell, because that's its own thing. I'm going to go with Concerning Flight, because I just thoroughly enjoy John Rhys Davies' performance here and the goofy character moments and all of that.
Nice. Good deal. Well, I am going to go with The Year of Hell, obviously 1 and 2, because again, it's kind of the episode that I grimace to watch it, but I love strong character portrayals by most everyone, and of course, Kurtwood Smith leading the charge. But I thought Janeway really shined in this. It was great to see some Janeway Chakotay moments. It was good to see some Paris and Chakotay moments. It was good to see the growing friendship between, as Aaron mentioned, between Seven and Tuvok. So just overall liked it. But again, that kind of lumps it into 2. But I didn't have an episode that I really hated in this grouping. I would probably go with Waking Moments, because there were parts of it that just kind of got tropish for me, and it just really reminded me of the TNG episode. Even though I love Chakotay and his part of it, I kind of lost a bit of interest. But again, I liked this overall group of episodes, and there's not one that I absolutely hated, which doesn't always happen, particularly with Voyager, which ends up having some kind of iffy moments from time to time. So, all right, well. In our next episode, we're going to jump into the next 6 segments of of Voyager in season 4. We will be tackling our favorite picks for TOS season 3. But I'm going to give you a little sneak preview. I'm going to tee it up. Episode after next, we're going to start something that echoes something Jen and I, and probably also you guys as well, did, where we would each one of us would choose a great episode we loved, and then an episode we didn't really care for, the good and the bad. But what we're doing this time is several weeks ago, the 4 main of us, so us here and Jen, did basically a random choice, or the roll of the dice, to do the random sode, or the random episode of all of Star Trek. So we rolled it. We each got to go in a sequence. So we picked we rolled for a series, then we rolled for a season, then we rolled for an episode. So all of season 1, and this will probably be consistent throughout the rest of this podcast, throughout the end of time, when we don't have something new to chat about in segment 1, we will do this. And so we have our first 3 or 4 laid out over the next several months. We will have a bye week when April and I do go on the cruise, because we won't get back in time enough to do an episode. But we'll have our first one episode after next, and I don't have it in front of me, but we'll let it be a surprise. We'll do that, and then we'll just do a deep dive on it. I'll have notes and tips and tricks and facts and all different stuff, and we'll just talk through that. So I'm looking forward to that. Should be a lot of fun. But anyway, friends, as always, thank you for joining us. Aaron, where do people find you out there?
Well, we're on Facebook, USS Rhapsody, and on Instagram. And, of course, you can find my other group, the Ghostbusters. I got my proton pack in the back there, if anybody's seen the video. GBMI at Ghostbusters Michigan on Facebook and on YouTube.
Very nice. All right, Peter, what about you?
Well, you can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas, usually just on the Discord. I'm also, once again, running a Star Trek Adventures campaign over on ELH's Twitch channel. So you can find me there. But other than that, that's where I'm at.
That's where he's at. Good deal. And I'm over on Threads and Instagram as C3Carpenter. Go ahead and spell it out. Very happy to have left X behind. I hear things are just getting worse, so that works for me. But the main thrust of what I do is that all 3 of us here belong to Starfleet International. Peter and I and my lovely wife, April, do help run the USS Grand Petoskey. We're one of the biggest chapters in the world of that international organization. We're based here in West Michigan, but there are chapters all over the state in our region and Eastern Canada for Region 13, which I have the pleasure of being the regional coordinator. If you're a Trekker and would love to meet other Trekkers where you live, either in those places or even in other places, please drop me a line through sfi.org or through the Grand Petoskey website. Give it a Google. We also run a great Discord for our chapter and also for Region 13. So if you happen to already belong and you're not part of a Discord, drop me a line. Would love to hear from you. Of course, you find Secret Friends Unite at the website of the same name. But again, if you visit patreon.com/SecretFriendsUnite, you can try our Patreon content for 7 days for free. And there's also a link on our website for that. So guys, thanks for joining us. Everybody, thanks for listening. I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring, and to keep on trekking.
Hey, thank you, everybody. Have a good one. And remember, 1,000 stars means a million maybes.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow @SecretFriendsU on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.